Hi guys, welcome in our new episode of Culture Clash. Today we're gonna talk about Invincible TV show.
The Netflix documentary called Biking Borders.
And also we're gonna come back with our special Fernando's Book Corner series. So let's find out what Fernando will recommend us today.
I'm really excited. Now the intro is passing by. Guido is once again on screen. And we can continue. The Netflix documentary called Biking Borders is about two people cycling from Berlin to China, to Beijing in China.
Dass wir das hier machen dürfen und die Sachen hier erleben dürfen, das ist einfach unglaublich, einmalig.
They cycle through 18 countries and it takes them 249 days, so quite a long time. And this is really entertaining to watch because what's quite interesting is that while they're doing this journey, they were not planning to do a film according to them. They were just doing this to raise money to build a school in Guatemala for poor students who should have access to real good education. So they were doing this sort of social media marketing campaign to gain this money. And they started to film for YouTube vlogs the whole journey, but were not originally planning to put this into a real film. And only afterwards, after they were done with this journey, they realized that this could perfectly be made into a full movie because they experienced so much during this journey. They met a lot of people along the journey with kind of tragic stories. They were really surprised by how some countries like Iran, who are always portrayed by the Western media in a kind of negative light, are in reality, how the differences are. So they had a lot of experiences on their way and went to a lot of countries that are also quite unknown, like Kyrgyzstan or Turkmenistan. So that was like a kind of really interesting experience, and it's cool that they managed to make this into a real kind of road trip film.
And how this documentary looks like. I mean, how the shots look like, what kind of equipment did they have?
I wondered during the film if there was actually a third guy, a cameraman with them, filming the whole process, but in fact, they were only filming each other for the whole time. I think they used a lot of like action cameras and stuff like that, but high quality stuff, because they were of course planning to go into media with this because they needed to have as much attention as possible to finance the school. But you really kind of forget that this was like vlog material, sort of. While watching it, it seems like there was a third guy with them, but there in fact wasn't. So yes, what's also quite interesting to say is that they were not staying in any hotels. They were planning to sleep in the tent for the whole time, and they started in September, so over the whole winter month they were like in these desert states, which was extremely cold, and you can also see this in the film. And there were like really high risks and problems. For example, they were encountering bears and also had to go through snowy places like Turkey in winter, which everybody would say don't do a long bike tour in winter in Turkey. But still they said, we want to do this because we want to show that we are doing something to bring the attention for this project that has to be finished, for the school that has to be built for the children. Interesting to add is that they hated cycling before. Like one of the guys said, when we used to live like 25 minutes walking distance from the university, which would have been a 3-minute distance when you would cycle, we decided to walk because we hated cycling so much. We didn't do any particular training in terms of cycling before, but still we managed to overcome this distance. And they said they really helped each other through this process, because the one guy is more the social media guy who has presented it to the public, and he said without the other guy I wouldn't have gotten to the destination, and the other guy said without him nobody would have known that I would have gotten to the destination. So that's really interesting as well. So it's really not a mistake to watch this documentary, and it's interesting to see what kind of diverse experiences they had along this long journey.
The show that I want to recommend you today is Invincible. It's an animation produced by Amazon Prime, and it's based on the comic book Invincible, created by Robert Kirkman, so the creator also of The Walking Dead, that I recommended you in the first episode of Culture Clash. So Invincible is a superhero comic book that is kind of similar to Marvel and DC Universe, but the thing that it makes it more unique when you compare to these comic books from these publishing houses is that Invincible is just one single story with one main character which you follow, and it's not so like messed up and chaotic that you wonder, okay, how I'm gonna start, which issue should I read first, and so on, because like you have a lot of stories in Marvel and DC. So this is the thing that is making easier to start reading or now watching Invincible. The story is about Mark, who is an average teenager, but not so average because his father is a superhero.
I'm nothing like my dad. I want to be just like you.
That came from different planets, so he is kind of like Superman figure. You know, he is from different planet, and now he is protecting Earth from enemies from space, for example, and he's called Omni-Man. But what's interesting that Mark is expecting to get superpowers, which he gets in the first episode, so he becomes. Yeah, so it's very interesting and funny story to follow. Also, the thing that I really like in this series is that the episodes are like 47 minutes, which is not so normal for animated series, because when you watch BoJack Horseman, Rick and Morty, you get like episodes that are like 20 minutes because the animation are more like simple and not so complex as, for example, live-action TV dramas. But Invincible, in my opinion, is more like normal live-action TV drama, but just made in animated way. And I think it's much better that they adapted the comic book, as animated series and not as live-action series, because it's just looks better, because it looks exactly as in the comic book.
Yeah.
The other fact that is great in this TV show are, of course, actors and actresses, because the voiceover is great.
And there's also some kind of famous people.
Yeah, because you have Steven Yeun as the main character. The Omni-Man is played by J.K. Simmons. Also, there is Mahershala Ali. Also, I forgot to mention that there is a lot of gore in this series because it's for adults. So it's more like serious superhero comic book series, because at the beginning, when you have like this some kind of Stranger Things?
Maybe somebody wants to
I will just continue. At the beginning, when you have this weird invasion of aliens, in the normal superhero, like Marvel superhero movies, nothing really happens, everything is fine, there is no any gore scenes, no one really dies from just a crowd, for example.
Yeah.
And here you have a lot of blood, like normal people dies in a very brutal way, just on the street. And yeah.
So how is the general dialogue? Is it generally like a lot of sarcasm and stuff for adults, or would you say not so much?
I mean, not so much. The only thing right now when you watch 3 episodes is just that it's kind of brutal.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think topics are not so different than in other superhero movies. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. I recommend you this.
We need to talk. What I'm about to tell you will change everything.
So now we have a special surprise for you. Not just these strobe lights here in the background, but also Fernando's book corner.
Hello, my name is Fernando. Today I want to talk about one of my favorite books of 2020, whose name is I Am 3 times, 17 Brushes with Death by the North Irish author Maggie O'Farrell. This is an autobiographical book which is divided in 17 short stories. Each story is placed out in a different time in her life, from her childhood when she was a kid or she was a teenager, and she wanted to impress her friends, and she jumped from the docks to the sea, and she almost drowned to death, but she was at the last moment rescued by one of her friends, to being a young adult in which she was almost, she had an experience, an encounter with someone who had killed previously several people, who had been a murderer, and her life was at risk, to other experiences, to almost being in a plane that was almost about to crash near Hong Kong, to fearing the life of her own child when she becomes a mother. And the nexus that connects all these stories is that all these stories relate experiences that the author has had throughout her life with death, near-death experiences, you could say. And of course it's very interesting, very intriguing, and this is a thrilling book, really. Every page you really want to know what's going on, what's going to happen, because they are all very suspenseful stories. You want to know if she drowns, if she has any consequences because of that. If you want to know what happens with the murderer who is assaulting her. You want to know what happens with a kid who has serious illness. And they are very, very interesting stories, naturally, but that's not all there is to this book, because one of the things that I really admire the most from this book is that Maggie O'Farrell is able to bring lots of deep discussions about life, about how we live, about our relationship with death, and about her own attitudes and what are her characteristics as a person that make her go to get herself into risky situations. So, for example, what I mean is that one of the lines of thought that goes through all this book is the idea that she's, you could say, an escapist. So since she was a child, she was someone who was always looking forward to escape from home, to run away, to go into adventures, go to different countries, to explore, to, she had this, you could say, will and need to explore and to run adventures and run risks and all that. And she explores this deep desire that is within her, how this desire has had really major consequences in her life, leading her towards, these 17 experiences with death, which are really chilling. And by any means, this is a book that tells a really compelling story about these kind of stories that we have and experiences that we have all had sometimes. And that's probably one of the elements that I love the most about this book, is that this is a book that, of course, it's very thrilling, it's very suspenseful, it's page-turner, definitely, but at the same time, it really brings very important questions. It talks about, our relationship with death. It talks about what is our attitude, how do we interact with why do we, for example, have sometimes this deep fall-on desire to go into other countries and all that? Why aren't we sometimes able to be happy, just, living a more sedentary life, I guess? And this book really questions all these attitudes, all these ways to live, and this is all very well knit in a really interesting story, in rather short 17 stories, in which the author is able to bring about a very compelling and beautiful and touching and chilling 17 stories.
Okay, thank you for watching. If you have any interesting series to recommend, you can just write in the comment section, and see you in the next episode of Culture Clash. Cheers.
Bye.